Welcome to The Landscape, your show about America's parks and public lands. I'm Aaron Weiss with the Center for Western Priorities in Denver.
And I'm Kate Gretzinger in Salt Lake City. We have a very special episode for you today. We're interviewing our outgoing executive director, Jennifer Rokala, or as we like to call her, Jen. Jen's last day was actually on Friday, but we recorded this conversation with our whole team last week. This is a fun one. We even snuck in some food wrecks around the West, so stick around for those, if nothing else. But first, the news.
Well, we can't say we didn't see it coming. Doug Burgum is giving his oil billionaire benefactor special treatment. The Bureau of Land Management has issued at least 71 drilling permits to Continental Oil, that is Harold Hamm's company, since Donald Trump took office. Burgum and Hamm have a very cozy, long-standing relationship. Hamm has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Burgum for his gubernatorial campaigns. They did business together before Burgum became Interior Secretary. Hamm has donated millions of dollars to Doug Burgum's pet project, the Teddy Roosevelt Library, which is set to open this July in Burgum's home state of North Dakota. Well, Jimmy Tobias at Public Domain and Julia Kane at Field Notes got their hands on emails showing that Hamm's company asked BLM to issue them drilling permits in Converse County, Wyoming, even though there was a court injunction barring new drilling there. A representative of Continental sent an email to the BLM laying out their theory of a legal loophole they could use to issue the permits anyway, and the BLM, of course, obliged. This is textbook pay-for-play politics, big donors pulling the levers of power to make an end run around the courts. I certainly hope this, along with a whole lot of other stuff, comes up when Doug Burgum faces the House Natural Resources Committee next week for a budget hearing.
Also in the news, housing advocates and conservation groups have come together to affirm their opposition to large-scale public land sell-off attempts. The group, Shared Ground, includes the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the National Coalition for the Homeless, the Wilderness Society, and the Sierra Club. It released a policy platform for development in the West that emphasizes the importance of enforceable affordability requirements, the prioritization of infill development over untouched public land, and the protection of ecologically and culturally significant areas. If you want to learn more about that, I wrote about it for our Substack. That's called Westwise. You can go subscribe, or I'll drop the link in the show notes.
Our guest today is, well, everyone. The entire Center for Western Priorities team is here because our fearless leader, Jennifer Rokala, is leaving CWP and starting a new chapter. So we are taking this opportunity to turn the tables and ask her to reflect on her last 11 years leading the Center for Western Priorities. So with us, in no particular order, Lily Bach-Brownstein, Rachel Hamby, Lauren Bogard, and Sterling Homard. Jen, before you got to CWP, you spent many years on Capitol Hill in D.C., working for Colorado Senator and Representative before that, Mark Udall. When you made that transition, what did you think it would be like going from those roles into advocacy?
You know, that's a great question, Aaron. I wasn't sure what to expect, especially with CWP at the time was a younger organization, a new organization, and not your typical conservation organization. It's not a membership organization. We're a communications hub in the West, and we focus on driving a conservation narrative in the media to promote public policy that protects public lands, promotes responsible energy development. So it was a big mystery to me. And at the time, CWP was just, I think at the time, 4 people. And it was even before you came on. You didn't come on for a few months until after I was on. And I was just trying to find my way and figure out what translates from working for a political candidate or an elected member of the Senate, and how do I translate that into proactive conservation policy. I will say one of the first pieces of public land that President Obama protected when I was at CWP was Browns Canyon, which is a perfect transition because that was something Mark Udall spent most of his political career in the House and the Senate working to protect. And so that was a big win right off the bat. And so I think that gave us a roadmap on how to advocate for public lands and how to push for protections on national monuments.
So let's jump in the time machine. I'm going to ask you, Jen, to think back on your very first week in this role as Executive Director at Center for Western Priorities. If you could time travel and stick a Post-it note to your computer monitor for your past self to read, what would it say?
I think it would say be fearless and don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think one of the strengths of CWP is our ability to be creative and throw a lot of things against the wall to see what might stick. And sometimes things work out great. Sometimes we have to make some corrections. But I think, use all the communications channels you have and be fearless. Don't be afraid to be creative, whether it's creating a podcast and you think about this podcast is going to celebrate a 10-year anniversary this fall. And at the time, there weren't a lot of conservation podcasts. And so, be creative and try to figure out what works. And if it doesn't work, then course correct.
So Jen, you said something earlier about starting at CWP, and it sort of was a mystery as to what work we actually do here, which is, I think, how everyone probably felt when they started. And part of that is because we do so many things, including, sending press releases, sending reporter memos, sending out our newsletter, hosting this podcast, et cetera, and so on. Was there a specific moment or sort of project that really made you understand the role of CWP in conservation, and what was that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kate. I think for me, it's when we started running the Winning the West campaign. And it's a campaign that we use to communicate with policymakers and candidates running for office in the West to show them that conservation is really important to voters in the West. And sometimes conservation and public lands might not pop as a top tier issue, but for Westerners, it's a way of life. And so when we started the campaign, we worked to communicate that with candidates. And when we started to see candidates on both sides of the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans, using Winning the West messaging and promoting their conservation policies that they would implement when they got into office, that was a real aha moment in terms of the impact that CWP has had and can have in communicating with policymakers and candidates.
So Jen, speaking of communicating, I'm sure many of our listeners know that public lands policy can be really dense and complicated and nuanced, and it has a lot of great acronyms. We're talking about things like FOIAs and FONSIs and EIS, and my personal favorite, which is a DNA, which is a determination of NEPA adequacy, where NEPA is itself an acronym within an acronym. So I'm wondering if you can think of your favorite example of the most wonky and boring policy that CWP worked on, but that you're proud of being able to successfully translate into a compelling human story or narrative that resonated with policymakers and the public.
I think for me, it's less about the acronyms and just communicating with policymakers. We do a lot of polling. You don't throw in the acronyms because you'd have to explain that in the polling. But when it comes down to it, Western voters want their lands protected, they value wildlife, they want clean air, they want clean water, they want the ability to recreate. So wherever that falls within an acronym, it's just communicating it in plain language, both so voters understand it and also policymakers understand it. NEPA, you don't have to say NEPA. You can just say, I really want to make sure that we're protecting wildlife, we're protecting endangered species, we're protecting public lands, and that's the value that Westerners all hold very dear.
Yeah, I think when I joined, it was like just an onslaught of acronyms. And we actually, as an organization, have an acronym list that I was given in my first week at CWP. And I, for like a straight day, just studied acronyms. And there still are new ones that I come across every now and then. So it's definitely overwhelming at times. But Jen, I was hoping you could share maybe a favorite oops moment, a moment that kind of seemed like a disaster at the time, but ultimately led to like a fantastic learning experience or a better outcome.
Yeah, I think, and I wouldn't necessarily call it an oops moment, but I feel like we were pushing the envelope. And we worked on a report called Conservation Gridlock. And It's a report that highlighted states in the West and the amount of public lands that they had protected. And it focused on specifically one of the states that was falling behind when it came to protecting public lands was our home state, most of our home state of Colorado. We have some elected officials in the Colorado delegation who talk about their passion for public lands and all the work that they're doing. But as we all know, it's really hard to get legislation passed through Congress, especially right now, given that Congress is broken. And we were putting out this report that didn't shine a very favorable light on Colorado. And some of our elected members of the Colorado delegation were not happy that we were putting this out. And you don't necessarily want to criticize people who are always trying to do the right thing, but maybe it's just not always coming together. And that's kind of the situation we found ourselves in. But we put that report out, and it, I think, kind of lit a fire under the Colorado delegation to ask President Biden to designate Camp Hale as a national monument. And that was the first new national monument that President Biden designated. And I think holding our conservation champs' feet to the fire sometimes produces some really positive results.
Yeah, I think that happened within the first couple months that I was working at CWP, and I was like, oh my God, this job is so exciting. So that was awesome. I remember that very clearly. And these days especially, victories are pretty few and far between. So when you look back, what is a favorite victory from your time at CWP that you look back with pride?
I'd say the Camp Hale designation was a big deal for us, given the report that we put out. That one was a big deal. I think our ability to communicate on a wide variety of issues when it comes to conservation has been really helpful to the conservation community and the conservation efforts. And then I think also all of the monuments that President Biden designated. We spent 4 years highlighting landscapes that deserved protection. And when you think about Avikwame, Chuckwalla, I mean, there's so many places that we promoted and made the case that these landscapes and these waters should be protected, that I think CWP has a great track record of conservation wins in the work that we've done.
It sometimes feels like advocacy work in this public land space is working on a geologic timeline, working on something for years and years until it gets done. And I'm thinking about things like the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which certainly we worked on for the first 5 years of my time here. There were plenty of others who worked on that for years and years before that, trying to bring permanent funding for LWCF. And it felt like everyone was spinning their wheels until suddenly you get to the end of 2020 and there is bipartisan agreement and recognition that LWCF should be permanently funded. And there it is. And it becomes law. It's signed into law as part of the Great American Outdoors Act. So my question for you is, if you could bury a time capsule on, let's say, your favorite piece of public land, that someone digs up advocating for lands 50 years from now, what does that say on that decades-long or centuries-long timeline?
Well, I think it says don't give up the fight. I mean, going back to Browns Canyon, the effort to protect Browns Canyon was a 50-year plus effort. And so some of these efforts take a long time. And I remember when I was working for Senator Udall, meeting with someone who had worked for a member of Congress from Colorado in the 80s. And she said to me, well, you know, we took care of all the low-hanging fruit, all the easy designations, whether it was wilderness or monuments or national parks. We took care of the easy stuff. So now it's up to you guys to do the really hard stuff. And so my advice is just don't give up, because I think public sentiment is behind us. Everybody, you know, the majority of voters in the West want more protections for public lands. So just keep at it.
And if you do create a time capsule, please make like a really vague pirate map. Like, all of it. Try to find the capsule one day.
And if you are burying time capsules on public lands, please do so in a legal manner with permission if needed. Just have to say that as advocates for public lands.
Don't bust the crust, especially for time capsules.
Yeah.
Don't bust the crust. Now that shows some deep knowledge of the crypto gamut. I'm not surprised you raised cryptobiotic. Thank you, Kate. Yes. I mean, what can we say but challenge accepted, right? And the work that we get to do oftentimes is using our presence on different communication platforms to share what folks on the ground have been doing for decades, if not longer. So that question brings to mind some of the folks we got to work with through our Road to 30 postcards campaign. So yeah, we will definitely keep at it. And then just on that topic of being on all the platforms and in the news cycle and driving a positive narrative around public lands, that certainly means that we read an awful lot of news, and that you have been the public face of this organization for a long time now. So I'm just curious, now that you don't have to be the face of our organization and check those Slack messages as they come in on the weekend, what are you most looking forward to doing on your first official Monday off?
That's a great question, Lauren. I haven't quite gotten my head around having a Monday off or every Monday off, but I think I'm looking forward to not setting an alarm, getting out for a run, maybe a little later in the morning. And I will always read Look West, so I look forward to trying to figure out who's written the narrative for that week or that day. But I still plan to stay plugged in and look forward to seeing all the great work that all of you do.
Well, we'll be checking in our MailChimp account to make sure that you're reading Look West. Just kidding. We won't do that. Jen,
we might do that.
I might do that. Yeah.
I will do that.
Some people might do that. I am curious. You've been here for 11 years. That's a long time to lead an organization, and CWP has changed a lot even in just the past 5 or so years that I've been here. How has it changed since you first started?
I think it's the way we communicate. And one of the things I really appreciate about CWP is how adaptable we are. I was going through some old print ads that we placed during a campaign that we ran called U-Turn Utah. And we had ads in the Salt Lake Tribune and magazines like a climbing magazine and a trail running magazine. And at this point, the way we communicate continues to evolve and change. And I think that's one of the biggest changes is how we communicate with policymakers, whether sometimes it's through paid advertising, but now we see how social media and influencers are having such an impact on getting messages out and communicating with followers. And how do you communicate, which channels or which social media channels do you use to communicate with reporters or policymakers or the general public? And I think CWP has done an amazing job at looking at what's changing and how do we change with it and how do we influence these channels.
Literally on Monday, Jen walked up to my desk with a newspaper. It had a U-Turn Utah ad in it. It was like, Sterling, this is a newspaper. I was like, what?
I don't think we've put anything in a newspaper in a physical newspaper, an ad in a long time.
In a while, yeah, for sure.
I was a paper boy for 2 years. I feel like that gives me credibility as a Gen Zer to say I delivered newspapers for a couple years. Granted, I was 8 years old. I was of the legal age to have a paper route. I think you had to be 10, but it was in my brother's name, and then he just kind of made me do it.
Amazing.
That's awesome, Sterling.
It was fun. Yeah, I don't think that newspaper exists anymore, sadly. Well, Jen, I'm curious to know, what is the silliest tradition or maybe running inside joke from the office that maybe you're going to miss it the most, or maybe just one that comes to mind that makes you giggle when you think of it?
That's a great question. Well, one thing, I don't think I'm going to be able to look at the Scandinavian swimmers from Trader Joe's and not think of a CWP staff retreat or planning session, since those are one of the main staples of our snack tradition. But I'd actually like to hear from you guys. What is our silliest tradition? Or yeah, turn it back on you, Sterling. What do you think?
Silliest tradition?
Or inside joke?
Are you going to miss having to go through 3 different elevators to get up to the meeting room and the top floor of our office?
It's a unique situation, that's for sure.
That's the silliest office thing that I think we do here.
It's been a while, I think pre-pandemic era, since we had a round of office putt-putt, but we should probably bring that back here.
You just need to make sure there's a lefty one. I think every time I just turn the putter backwards and I'm like hitting it balls at the backside of it.
Whatever works.
Whatever works, right?
I'll say one of my favorite recurring conversations we have in the office is, "Hey, Sterling, have you seen this movie? Have you seen this show?
Yeah.
Hey, Sterling, how old were you when 9/11 happened?"
Yeah.
And you're so good-natured about that, but it does give us an opportunity to reflect on the breadth of the audience that we're trying to reach when we talk about these issues. So thank you for being so good-natured, Sterling, when we pepper you with those questions.
Oh, that's nice of you. I love when the answer is, I wasn't even existing yet.
Oh, you do you? Yeah, sure. I love that too.
That makes you feel good?
Well, I'll say for myself, one thing I'm going to miss about being in the office with Jen is I won't have someone to talk about The Bachelor or Taylor Swift with, as our listeners may not know, but Jen is a secret fan of both, and I don't think anyone else in the office is interested in having those conversations with me, so it's going to be a huge loss on my part.
Yeah,
I would have watched this last season of The Bachelor. Wait, The Bachelorette, right?
The
With Taylor-
Bachelorette.
The one that no one will ever see? Yeah.
The canceled Mormon wives.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to watch
yeah.
it, and I would have talked about it with you, but yeah, maybe if there's a new show that's going to be really dramatic, let me know, and
I'll work on it.
Yeah,
If anyone out there wants to subscribe to the bonus CWP discusses bad reality TV feed of the podcast, please let us know, because I'll be leading the below deck discussions.
That's the paid subscriber
Yeah.
content that you guys have been waiting for.
Yes. Well, Jen, you're passing the baton over to Aaron, our deputy director and longtime host of The Landscape. So, metaphorically, what is the item you're leaving in the top drawer of your desk for him to take over the executive director role?
Well, Aaron and I have really been at CWP for almost the exact same amount of time. So Aaron's coming up on his 11-year anniversary. So I am confident that Aaron has all of the tools that he needs to succeed to lead CWP into this next chapter. I would say, be sure to approve everybody's expenses and make sure everybody gets their time cards in. That's always going to be one of the most important things, is making sure everybody gets paid and expenses are taken care of. But no, I am just thrilled that Aaron is going to take over as executive director. I think CWP is in good hands, in all of your hands, and I think Aaron's just going to do a fantastic job. So,
Thank you for that, and I think I've said it to everyone here individually in one form or another, but taking over for Jen, very big shoes to fill, but also taking over CWP, this transition at this moment, with this particular team of a whole bunch of folks who are both multi-talented in so many ways and have so much deep policy knowledge, gives me a lot of reassurance, because everyone else here on this Zoom call podcast with us right now brings so much to the table, and that's what keeps me going in this moment, is having such a great team going forward.
Oh, Thanks, Aaron. That's sweet. Really
Yeah,
excited.
that's nice.
Jen, you can literally leave something in your desk drawer for Aaron too, something unexpected.
Could
Yeah,
leave,
maybe-
some sort of prank item.
The map. Leave the map to the
One of
capsule in the top.
Leave
those
the
little
treasure
snakes.
map.
Challenge accepted.
A fake tarantula.
Gotcha.
Well, guys, speaking of desks, it's a long-running joke in conservation that we all sit at desks looking at screens, doing exactly this, talking about conservation and talking and thinking about these beautiful places. And a couple times a year, there's this glorious time where we get to actually go out and see them and experience the places that we all are working so hard to protect. So, Jen, I'm curious, in the time that you've been at CWP, what is the most beautiful or the most moving piece of public land, the place that you visited that left the most lasting impression on you?
There's so many places. One of my favorite memories is the staff retreat we did in Grand Junction when we did a day-long tour of the Dolores Canyons, a national monument proposal in western Colorado, and it is just spectacular and deserves protection. It was a fun trip and just fun to see everybody enjoying this as much as we all did, and just how spectacular the river is, the Red Rock Canyons, and that is one of my favorite spots and favorite memories of CWP. I will also add, getting to celebrate the designation of Browns Canyon at the very beginning of my time with CWP was really meaningful, and doing a rafting trip down the Arkansas to celebrate the designation that included Secretary Sally Jewell and all of the advocates that worked to protect that monument was really special.
Somewhat related question, maybe less important but more interesting, and I guess maybe everyone can take this one. What was the best meal you've gotten to eat while on the road with CWP?
So I would say one of my favorite places, I don't know that this was necessarily the best meal, but I love hot tomato pizza in Fruita, Colorado, and that was
So good.
Also part of our staff retreat, but that's one of my favorite places. What about you, Aaron? You're the foodie.
I mean, Bin 707 in Grand Junction, we were there before that chef started winning all the James Beard Awards, and that restaurant is truly spectacular. And on a personal note, just last summer, getting to drive through Tucson and take everyone in the SUV with us through the Eegee's drive-through in Tucson, so when everyone could experience an Eegee's slushie for the first time is deeply personal for me. I don't know. Sterling, you got a favorite food so far?
It was the Eegee slushy, Aaron. That was the best thing I've ever had.
Yes!
I'm only trying to
That's
say
the right
that.
answer. Good job, Sterling.
No, it was good. It was a good slushy. It was. I liked that the ice was very finely ground, I guess you could say. It was just very finely ground slushy. Very smooth, very lemony.
Anyone else? Yeah.
It's crazy that it's all in Grand Junction. There's that taco party there too. That's so
Taco
good.
party. So good.
Grand Junction punches way above its weight for food. Yeah.
Only
Yeah, it's
occurring to
true.
me just now that Grand Junction is a food destination.
It seriously is.
Taco party's fantastic. At Hot Tomato, they have specifically the peach pizza around
Yeah,
August.
it's so good.
That one is so good.
Oh my gosh. And also kind of in Fruita or wherever, Palisade, whatever the peaches are grown, there's a little farm stand that serves peach soft serve that's like, it only has like 3 ingredients. It's like peaches, milk, and sugar, and it's so good.
Amazing.
I'm
If
listening.
you ever find yourself there, look for it.
I can tell Lauren has some food opinions here too.
Well, I have had the opportunity to visit some really wonderful places, and I'm surprised I can say this, but a couple times have had the opportunity to go to remote Southeast Oregon. So Kate and I, when we were working on our Owyhee Canyonlands film, there was an all-purpose gas station called Rome Station. Our phones kept switching time zones. It was that remote between Pacific and Mountain, and I ate the best cheeseburger of my life 3 nights in a row, and then I tried something else and it was a mistake, and I went back to the cheeseburger, and there were like Angus cattle around, and it was phenomenal. The
I
best.
knew you were going to say that.
Rome Station, baby.
Rome
did
Station.
too.
I,
knew you were
I still have a hat.
But out there, that is as fresh as the beef is going to get, right? So,
My favorite, I think, was on our Keep Parks public tour when we were driving from Flagstaff to Page, and we'd stopped at the Grand Canyon, visited Baj Novjo. It was a long drive in the dark, switching time zones. There was nothing to eat along the way. We were getting so hungry, and we were nervous because of the time zone thing that everything was going to be closed when we got to Page. But we rolled in and got just like the best chicken sandwich. I can't even remember the name of the restaurant, but it tasted so good.
Something like Popeyes.
It was not
way.
Popeyes. It was not Popeyes. It was a local restaurant.
We're going to have to put it in the show notes. It was like Bird something.
all right, I want to bring this back home to the actual purpose of this podcast as much as we also want a side podcast on Southwest food, which I'm really here for. But Jen, as you were heading off, what gives you hope for public lands right now? Because it's a tough time.
It is a tough time, but what gives me hope is that the voters in the West are solidly in the protection of public lands camp. And we saw that play out last year during the sell-off fight. And I think as this administration came in, we knew that they would unwind a number of the policies and protections that the Biden administration put in place. But when the threat of public land sell-off became a reality last year, we saw people mobilize in ways that I was even surprised. I mean, people of all political persuasions, from conservation advocates to sportsmen to podcasters, really stood up for public lands. And I think the voice of the West was saying no to sell-off, and no very loudly. And that gives me hope, is that there is a movement. And I think elected officials, if they're not paying attention, it's at their own peril. Voters in the West want public lands protected. And I will say, when the Conservation in the West poll was released this year, Axios covered the release of that poll, and my favorite line from this story was that conservation isn't a niche issue, it's political bedrock in 8 Southwest and Rocky Mountain states. And I think that's true. And my expectation and hope is that come the next Congress, we will see people and elected leaders standing up for public lands. And so I would like to know, what gives all of you hope? Aaron, what would you say?
Oh, I'm going last here.
Fair enough.
I'm going to defer to Rachel first on this one.
Well, Jen, earlier you talked about the trip that we took as a team to the Dolores Canyons, and there's a place there where you can pull off the side of the road, and it's right there, there's a roadside sign pointing out these exposed rocks that are 1 billion years old, like billion with a B. And you're just standing there in the presence of these rocks that have seen so many things come and go, entire geological eras, entire species that have come and gone. And it just reminds you that everything that we're doing is going to pass. And what's most important, I think, is participating in and ensuring that the thread of caring for landscapes, for wildlife, for our natural environment is going to be carried on beyond you. And I think each of us has our part to play in that, both keeping it alive and passing it down to the next generation, whether it's your kids, whether it's next generations of people who work in conservation, who you have mentored as you have been mentored, all of us, Jen. So that's what gives me hope, is that we're carrying that energy forward, and it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. And, those rocks are still going to be there long after we're gone, watching what comes after us.
Kate, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I think similar to Jen's answer, just the public support for public lands is really what keeps me going. Like, I know that it's just so nice to get to work every day on issue where you're on the right side of history. Like there's so many jobs where you have to kind of bite your tongue and go into work every day, even though you're not making the world a better place. And like we get to go into work every day knowing we're making the world a better place. And sorry, that kind of is a side note. But yes, knowing that the public is on our side makes the job a whole lot easier. We just have to get the information out to them, and they'll always back us up.
Lily?
Yeah, I think it's the conversations I have with random people, plumbers that are fixing a clog in my house. That happened a couple weeks ago. People ask you what you do, and you say, I advocate for protecting public lands. And immediately, whoever it is, you don't know their political background, you don't know any of their values or beliefs, but they always get it. They always go, oh, yeah, that's so important. That's important to me. I love to hike. I love to camp. I love to go walk in the park with my dog. Everybody you talk to just understands it, and it feels like is with us no matter what their political background.
Yeah, I think this answer is going to be similar to a lot, and it's just like the opportunity to see people gather around a common issue is so powerful, and I think public lands is one issue where people are so unified, and I really saw that last year when we went on tour with Keep Parks Public and hosted events for people to gather, and I've just seen it in attending protests and like just being in the presence of others. I get like so emotional. And I learned there's a term for this. It's called collective effervescence. It's when you just like feel so overwhelmed, in the sense that this whole time I haven't been alone. Like sometimes it can feel so isolating, working on public lands issues when folks in positions of power are doing things that are like, I thought this was unpopular. I thought the public didn't want this. And sometimes that can make me doubt whether I am really in the majority of people who want to see public lands protected. But then to actually go somewhere and see people gather, it's really powerful. And it's truly an emotional experience. And that gives me hope going forward.
I don't think I've ever heard collective effervescence before, but I think that's why I buy fizzy water in 35 packs from Costco.
That's so
All right, Lauren.
That's really beautiful, Sterling. I like that. And I've felt that too. And I think there is a lot of solidarity, or at least it feels that way to us out there. And especially when we have the opportunity to interact with folks. But I think where I would go with this question is to give a shout out to some of the folks we've encountered who are actually working at land management agencies or have recently left public service, and their bravery and how much this work matters to them. Oftentimes, I think it's a really thankless job. Sometimes it's a dangerous job. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not a very lucrative career path, or might not always be. But the folks who we've encountered who have recently severed from that experience have been so generous with sharing their knowledge and why this work matters. And you get the sense that they would carry on, and that they will carry on outside of working at these agencies. So that gives me a lot of hope. I hope that there will be an opportunity going forward where people will want to do this, and we can have the next generation of public land stewards. But I think that's on all of us to create that. So I've just been really grateful for those folks who have shared that context and background knowledge with us as we've been wanting to promote public lands and the importance of them on our platforms.
And I think reflecting on almost 10 years now of doing this podcast, I mean, that's one of the things that keeps me going, is getting to talk to so many people across this environmental space, so many authors, advocates, scientists, political leaders, you name it. I don't know what we're up to in terms of number of individual guests we've had. It's got to be in the hundreds at this point, right? And getting to hear all of those perspectives, getting to learn so much from them, has been, really the pleasure of my career so far. And I think probably one of the reasons you may see me a little less on the podcast given this transition, but I'm not going to go away entirely because there are too many people that I want to talk to. And there are going to be times when I'm going to call rank and say, no, I'm doing that interview because I want to learn and ask questions, and I feel that passion, as Sterling mentioned, the collective effervescence that we have from 10 years of these conversations is what keeps me going. But I think with that, we need to let Jen have the last word. I hate to put you on the spot and just ask for words of wisdom, but here we are.
Well, thanks, Aaron. And I think, I've said this a couple times, but I am so grateful to have worked with all of you. And some of you I've worked with multiple times. But this has just been an extraordinary 11 years. And I've loved every minute of working as CWP's executive director and getting to do something that I've been passionate about since I was just out of college. Public lands in the West have always been really important to me, and I'm grateful and lucky to have grown up in Colorado and in some ways taken these lands for granted. And so over these last 11 years, being able to fight for them has just been extraordinary. But really what's most extraordinary is having had the opportunity to work with all of you and our past colleagues who we worked with at CWP. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the great work you all do, and I will be one of your biggest cheerleaders. So thank you guys for being such great friends and colleagues, and just really appreciate each and every one of you.
It's not goodbye. It's we'll see you soon.
See you later.
Here's a little good news to end this episode. A solar ranch in Tennessee is using new technology to allow cattle to graze under solar panels. Software pivots the solar panels to a horizontal position when the cattle are present, giving them enough clearance to roam and graze safely. The panels also provide shade that helps soil retain moisture and grow forage, which is an upside that could be especially appealing here in the arid West. There are already over 100,000 acres in the U.S. where sheep graze under solar panels, but this cattle grazing thing is new, and it would be a huge step forward for green energy if it's adopted widely.
Also good news for the cattle, otherwise you just end up with a well-done burger out there.
That's right.
All right, that is it for today, gang. Go check us out on Substack. Kate, as she mentioned, wrote that great piece on the Shared Ground Housing Coalition. Our policy director, Rachel, is going nuts doing some deep dives into emerging policies and proposals that threaten public lands, including a proposed rule that will make it possible to mine in national forests with no public notice. Also, Rachel's got the top 5 most head-scratching moments from Doug Burgum's recent budget hearings.
Thanks again to Jen for 11 great years leading CWP, and thank you for listening to The Landscape.
We miss you already, Jen.